Streaming live via the internet. Welcome to ISP Radio, your weekly source for ISP-related news, events, and interviews with industry experts. If you deliver internet via fiber optic, wireless, coax, or any other way, you're in the right place. Chat live with us weekly via ispradio.com every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Central Time. And now a brief word from our sponsors. Link Technologies, providing ISP consulting, support, and hardware for wireless ISPs. TowerCoverage.com, providing online RF coverage maps. Mimosa Networks, providing high-density, high-bandwidth radio products. Advanced LLC, providing retail and wholesale advanced communication services by matching providers with your bandwidth needs. And by Sitel, providing reliability in surge suppression. And now your host for ISP Radio, Steve Grabiel and Dennis Burgess.
Welcome to another edition of ISP Radio. I'm your host, Steve Grabiel, broadcasting from the home office in California, and Dennis is hosting the show and producing it from St. Louis, Missouri. You there, Dennis?
I am.
Good. So, anything going on out there? It's been hotter than it blazes out here, and we're in a drought, of course, and so everyone's crying the blues about that. No one can drink water unless upon request. It's just really dry out here. I imagine it's different for you over there, right, Dennis?
Yeah, it's about the same thing. We have had plenty of rain, so not really an issue with that. We're supposed to get some more this weekend. The past weekend, beautiful weather, but it is now slowly rolling into that wonderful St. Louis humidity that we get here. So now about halfway through the day, you walk outside, breathe in, spit back out because of all the moisture. So definitely getting finally hot again, as it should here in St. Louis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, not much going on. My network's been running pretty darn good, thanks to Dennis helping me out, but just things seem to be purring along the way they should. Any major things going on out there that you've seen, Dennis?
Well, the big thing is September 1st. By the way, that was yesterday. If you have not filed your Form 477, you are now late. The answer I've gotten from the FCC at this point in time is if you have not got that done yet, go ahead and do it. You still are required to do it, and they still want you to get that wonderful Form 4477 in as quickly as possible. It was due September 1st, but again, go ahead and get it done. You don't want to sit there and not have it done, even if it takes you a little while to complete it. So just keep that in mind. That's probably one of the biggest things that is out there right now. For those of you that don't know, of course, we have Wispapalooza coming up October 10th through the 17th. The main agenda is already posted. There are lots and lots of great exhibitors. The exhibitor hall is filling up very, very quickly. Going to have lots of exhibitors to show. And as I said, we are going to have the agenda is already up there for all of the opportunities to go listen to different things going on. Lots of different sessions, etc. So really, really good stuff. You need to take a look at that as well. The Fiber Weekend, which is the October 10th and 11th, that agenda is not posted yet, but I know it is coming up very quickly. And there's plenty of co-located training events as well at the WISPA show. For those of you that don't know, Link Technologies is also hosting a 5-day Router OS advanced class here in St. Louis on September 21st. We just want to make sure we, kind of gave that a good little plug. It is a research class, so if you have worked with Router OS before, it is a great class to get in because you get up to 4 certifications within 5 days. If you have any old certs that are about to expire, remember they expire every 3 years, guess what? It's a great class to take to get your recertification in the Microtech platform. Other than that, we are pretty quiet. We have a great speaker today on the show, and I'm really excited to hear from him. And I know we got quite a few people that are interested in hearing from him.
Right. Well, today we were fortunate to have for us WISPA's lobbyist in Washington, a man named Ari Storch. He's the president of Cascade Strategies, lives and works in D.C. He's out there daily fighting the good fight for us on the Hill there. And Ari, are you there?
I am here, Steve. Thank you so much.
You bet.
I love how you say Washington, like a lot of like a veteran in Washington says it too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just a redneck hillbilly from New Mexico. Anyways, Ari, could you start off and tell us how you got involved in DC as a lobbyist, and what led you down this path, and what got you involved with WISPA?
Well, that's actually I'm a long recovering story in a sense of how I got involved in D.C. I actually began my career working for a foreign government for four prime ministers. For two of them, I was their in-house government affairs lobbyist. I kind of found my way to that just by being engaged. Believe it or not, 25 plus years ago when I was in college, just got tired of people deciding things for me, so I decided to be engaged in government and become an advocate. So when I went to work for the foreign government side, and then I went to work for a grassroots organization for about 3 years, did some campaign work on the presidential side, and then I went corporate about 16 years ago. I turned to the corporate world. I've opened up multiple firms of my own, and have been doing it ever since. It is, for me, the most rewarding work. Couldn't love it more. I love the excitement. It's the constant chaos and the fluid situation of Washington. For a guy like me, it is the great thrill of this town. So,
Well, good. We've got a guy that loves what he does. That's huge. So before the show, we were talking, and you had mentioned probably going a little bit in advance here, but you mentioned some businesses that did not have lobbyists in DC and the effects of not having such. That might be a little bit later down the show, but why would an organization like WISPA want to fund a lobbyist?
Washington does two things really well. It either really hurts you or it can really help you. If you're not in Washington, you are left to the whims of both your competitors, or hope that something good might actually happen for you. I've seen through my career, my 20 plus years of doing this, folks who have had the vision to begin engaging in Washington early on because they just don't want to be hurt. They don't want their competitors to get the competitive advantage and take advantage of the regulatory landscape that can harm us and marginalize our business in our sectors. And I think when the board became engaged in Washington, the WISPA board, it really decided at that point that it was going to stop yielding the territory in Washington to our competitors. And that's the most important part. And when we discuss why WISPA should be engaged, it really comes down to protecting your marketplaces. We have so many dynamic, different types of competitors and allies at the same time in Washington, but we did not have a full-time presence to ensure that our interests were always represented. And that's where the WISPA board has taken it finally. And that's where it's going to be exciting because, as I said before, Washington does two things really well. It either really hurts you or it can help you. And now we're going to begin taking advantage of those opportunities.
Cool. How long have you been engaged with WISPA as our lobbyist, if you will?
Well, we've just launched the WISPA full-time government affairs presence in Washington just this past spring. So it's only been a handful of months. What's been interesting is in that handful of months, we've hosted a policy fly-in, which, in my opinion, tremendous success. And next go round, we need more WISPA members to start coming. I'll tell you why it was so critical. We flew in right on the heels of the FCC's open internet ruling. They've created this whole new massive bureaucracy, shall we say, under Title II of the Telecommunications Act to regulate our world. While we have a small carve-out right now as small businesses, that carve-out is going to expire at the end of this year. When the fly-in took place at the beginning of the year, the open internet rules had just been issued, and everybody was clamoring for where we stood to understand how this truly affected our business. I will tell you that I will throw one of our WISPA colleagues under a bus. When Forbes Mercy went into one meeting, Forbes out of Washington State, um, we the staffer he met with was surprised to hear the proclamation that we felt this bill would hurt our businesses and make it more difficult for us to be profitable and continue to service these underserved populations. She was shocked to hear from Forbes that that was the reality as we saw it. If we did not have that fly-in and Forbes hadn't done that meeting, we have a Senate staffer who never would have even thought our industry would have been affected because they all thought the carve-out truly protected our industry. So these are very important pieces to how to engage this town. So that's why this engagement and the timing of why we started was so critically important. We have so many more hurdles coming before us that we're going to have to navigate. But with the members, and why I say this, it's important for the members because I'm a day-to-day face, but you all are the businesses, you are the employers, you are the folks that matter most to the members of Congress. So while I'm a great facilitator for that, and WISPA board has seen the need to begin really implementing a full-time effort in Washington, incorporating the members is going to be the most critical aspect to all of this.
Mm-hmm. Dennis, you got anything?
Yeah, I mean, so what you're saying, and I want to make sure I made this clear, is that you really want more WISPA members to attend these shows so that these people, the people that are on the Hill, they're not out there in the field. They don't know how all this affects us. They think they know, but they really don't. And your story here with Mr. Mercy, with Forbes, is that if he wasn't there, this person would have no idea that this was a bad ideal.
Correct. What we're starting to develop now from the WISPA Government Affairs angle here is it's a two-tier approach. We need to be getting to the decision makers here in Washington, not just from me on a daily basis where I can monitor and have constant communications with them, but we have to expose them to the members and so they can have a better understanding of who's the population we serve, our members are serving in each population center. How do we do business? How do we compete against the bigger guys? What is our role in all of this? I will give you another example. The USDA has a grant program for, the rural development, the Rural Utility Service has a program for rural development for broadband. They changed the rules on their own a little over a year ago to eliminate communities that have mobile service. They may not have fixed broadband, but they'll have mobile service. And that was a decision that USDA made on its own in a vacuum. Nobody in Capitol Hill understood it. Elizabeth Bowles from Arkansas, our Legislative Affairs Committee chair, and I met with Senator Jerry Moran, who chairs the Agriculture Appropriations Committee in the Senate. Why is this important? Well, that's the committee that the Rural Utility Service gets all of its money for this grant program. Our products are now no longer, shall we say, able to take advantage of that grant program. We could not build out a new and service a new community by utilizing that grant money now because if you have mobile, you're now eliminated from qualification. The senator did not understand that. His staff had no idea. And when Elizabeth met with his chief of staff, and then we met actually as a whole policy forum en masse, there was 30-plus WISPA members in a meeting with the senator in his office in one meeting. He was shocked to learn the realities of that one regulatory change and how it might affect rural communities. So now he's actually holding a hearing in October on rural utility service, and we know this is going to be a priority question for him. So all of this is because the members have become engaged. I can facilitate this, and we can get it to a point, but when a member meets with a member of Congress, when a WISPA business meets with these folks, the realities set in. And without that, the understanding is very peripheral. And that's why it's so important for WISPA members to become much more engaged, with us and, partner with all of us on these efforts.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, definitely good information. So I asked you a question prior to the show, and this is kind of one of those weird questions. And I know it's a hard to answer because I get the question as a board member, and the question is basically, what does the lobbyist really do? What is their week like? What is their month like? What is the fight that they're doing for our industry? In general, I mean, what is that? They just, like I said, a lot of members, they just don't have an idea of what that actual job entails.
Well, and to it's we all see the media and think that the media means something, and the stories of what a reality of a lobbyist is. Unfortunately, it's not all golf courses and dinners, nor is it ever really that often that as well. The reality is our daily life changes every day. Congress is a very fluid situation. We look at things sort of on a yearly cycle in a sense. What's important for us is we sit down with the Legislative Affairs Committee and draft up our legislative priorities at the beginning of the year. Once I have that information to understand once we've decided where we want WISPA to go, which we've done, we then develop a strategy to target who are the key committees, who are the key members who are in charge of these policies, where in the administration, in the presidential administration, are they making these decisions. And it's up to us to begin opening the lines of communication, developing the relationships with these folks, and making sure that on a daily basis, our positions are being heard, understood, and that we're also working with them to help, as they're looking at new policy decisions, how will that affect our industry and our members. So any given day is a very different day. There are days where Congress, will hold a hearing. So one of our key committees we focus on is the Senate Commerce Committee. And the Senate Commerce Committee held a hearing not too long ago on the future of broadband in America and the growth. We worked with the subcommittee staff prior to that hearing to share WISPA's vision of where we see the industry headed, where we see competition in the marketplace going, the role we see for the different types of services that are out there, including fixed wireless. The staff then incorporate that for their members of Congress. They provide them that information. As they create witness lists, sometimes WISPA might be invited to become a witness. That's something we're working towards, again, as our profile continues to grow, as the understanding of our industry continues to grow. We'll help them prepare questions for their witnesses. We'll help their members be prepared for how the discussion goes and what the effects will be on us. And then subsequent to that hearing, we'll have follow-up. What did the witnesses testify to, and what are the realities, again, as we see them. So that happens on a weekly to monthly basis, these hearings. You have committees and members of Congress who are constantly crafting new policy positions. You have in the House right now, there's a long-term move to reauthorize the Telecommunications Act, which will have significant impact on our industry in terms of broadband and spectrum, various different policies, how the FCC functions. And so that will take months and months to develop, but we will be involved in that on a daily basis. Again, conveying our messages, developing our position papers, making sure that not only the staff of the committee, but the members of those committees and their staff are being educated in our position. So no given day is the same thing. A lot of it some of it's reactionary. One member will simply decide to make a statement that will cause us to react. Our opponents in the business and industry will make their political moves. It's almost a chess game in a sense. They'll make their move. We need to make a move to counter that move. And at the same time, we're simply trying to be on a proactive stage of getting our positions out there. So when they're crafting this new Telecommunications Act reauthorization, they already understand where we are. So as I said, there's no day that's the same. Every day is different, which is exciting to me. That's the part I love, because you wake up in any given day. The only thing you have consistent, first of all, if I wake up, it's a good day. That's about the only consistent thing that's going to happen on that day. then the rest of it is a lot of time is reactive and reactionary. And so, but our job is really to be monitoring how all of those chessboard pieces are moving around a table, making sure that our strategies are in place, and frankly, being very nimble and fluid. Because as you know, everything in Washington changes on a daily basis.
There we go. That is a really good description of what's going on. So, what are the issues that are currently going on that we, as a member, should know about? Is there certain things that we need to know about that is going on? Is there things that we can do to help you, etc.?
Well, the most important thing that we're engaged in today. So let me give you an understanding of where things are at Capitol Hill and in Washington right now. Capitol Hill works on a annual cyclical basis, of course. So you have every 2 years you have what's called a new Congress begin, and you have 2 legislative sessions that line up with the calendar years. That 2-year Congress lines up with the House elections. The House of Representatives is up for re-election every 2 years, and 1/3 of the Senate is up for re-election every 2 years. So the 2016 elections that are coming next year will re-elect the entire House of Representatives. We'll have 1/3 of the Senate up for grabs, and just so happens is also a presidential election year. So what we're in right now is what we term a midterm cycle. We're in the first term of this Congress. Next year, 2016, will become the second term. Right now, we're at the tail end of what's known as the August recess, which is the 1-month break where Congress leaves town and can do no more harm because they're not here. I say that half jokingly, of course, only half jokingly. But the reality is now we are gearing up for the budget season. October 1st marks the new fiscal year of the calendar for Congress. I would anticipate that we are not going to start the new fiscal year with all of the spending bills in place that need to be so government keeps functioning smoothly. We will, matter of fact, I can tell you now with 1,000% of assurance that will not happen. So what's going to happen in Congress over the next few months is really a bit of chaos. You have the spending bills that have to get done. What will end up happening is you'll have what's known as a continuing resolution again until the House and the Senate can find agreement with President Obama's administration on the spending levels, allowing the Senate Democrats then to vote for these spending packages. Regardless of what you might read in the media, nothing in Washington happens in a vacuum. Everything happens in a bipartisan way, simply based upon the rules of the Senate. So it's not usually one party's fault for anything. It's usually both parties' faults. So we'll be buried in the spending. There will be some tax provisions coming up, and some of which may affect our members very directly. There is a very large push afoot to figure out how to fund the highway infrastructure. How do we pay for highway infrastructure? Part of the discussion of this is reforming taxes for corporate America. The administration wants to pay for the highway spending by reforming corporate tax structure, which we have no problem with. There is a big push, though. When I say corporate tax structure, that leads out our small businesses. Our members with pass-through entity businesses would be left out of that corporate tax reform. So we're heavily engaged in trying to make sure that if they tackle corporate tax reform, small businesses like our members who have pass-through entities, S Corps, LLC, C Corps, are not left behind. So that is something we are spending a lot of time on making sure happens. At the same time, our biggest legislative priority is on the FCC's net neutralities or open internet rules. There is a small business carve-out that exempts our folks, the overwhelming majority of WISPA members. There are some WISPA members who are not exempt under those rules, but the overwhelming number of them are exempt. That will expire in December, and the FCC is actively working on whether they renew those rules and keep that exemption up. That is critical for us right now because that affects almost all of our members. If we're not exempt, that means people are spending money on regulatory lawyers that were vulnerable to lawsuits and lots of other places that would not be good for our businesses. it's not intended to be focused on us. It's intended to be focused on the big players. So that right there is probably our single largest legislative concern, is what do we do to ensure the FCC keeps that carve-out moving forward for us? There are plenty of members, both sides of the aisle on Capitol Hill, who support our positions and want the FCC to renew this. And so we're spending a lot of time working with those members and those staffs, building bridges between the two parties, and trying to communicate with the FCC in such a way that empowers them to do the right thing as we see it. Keep that carve-out going. Frankly, we would like to see them make it permanent so we would never be subject to those Title II regulations. So those are the most important pieces that we're focused on right now, Dennis. How much Congress gets done over the next few months is open to a lot of interpretation. And we will see challenges on cybersecurity, which may or may not affect us as well. There's so many different things, but we will get there.
Now, Ari, I got a couple of questions. So you're WISPA's lobbyist, and you represent probably 800, 900 WISPs. I imagine that the big companies have their own lobbyists. What's that like, dealing with them when they're telling Congress one thing and it's not necessarily in line with what we believe? I mean, how do you deal with that? I mean,
well, that's an excellent question. I mean, the reality is that's the biggest challenge. You've had some of our biggest competitors who would like nothing more than to take over the unlicensed spectrum use space, flood it with their own overflow from their licensed spectrum, and kiss us goodbye. The challenge for us is making ourselves relevant to the members of Congress. We have to get to them. We have to help them understand the realities of our marketplace, the realities of the communities we serve, and frankly, the realities of our members. And that's where our members are most important. Again, I can facilitate and start conversations, but when you make it relevant, when you make it local to a member of Congress, when they meet their local WISPA, or their local WISP, shall I say, and those businesses, it becomes real, it becomes tangible to them. The big guys don't always have employees in their districts. They're not truly serving those underrepresented folks in those districts, and the rural areas in particular. And that's where we are able to become much more personalized to those members of Congress. Our opposition will use their PAC dollars. When I say PAC, a PAC is a political action committee where they can pool money from the employees of a company and they write campaign contributions. Now, allow me just to extrapolate a bit about campaign contributions. Campaign contributions buy you opportunities to make your case. They don't buy you influence with a member of Congress. There are some, I'm 99.9% of members, that's the way it is. It buys you the opportunities to make your case. We're not going to outspend our competitors on a campaign finance basis. Matter of fact, we're barely competing in that space, and the WISPA board is coming up with plans to address that, to buy us more opportunities to make our points. But our strength isn't in campaign finance. Our strength is in our members. It's in how local and real we are to these members of Congress. So when you ask how we do battle against the big guys, that's how we do it. We make ourselves relevant to the member of Congress. We introduce them to their local WISP. We explain to them how it works, how we serve those populations. I'm going to give you a great example. We were in meeting with a chief of staff to one member of Congress whose family doesn't have broadband, and there's no WISP serving their family farm right now. And they were excited to learn that the possibility of us coming in to be able to service their family's farm. That became real to them because Verizon was not going to lay, or not to call anyone out, but nobody was going to come lay fiber down to that rural area to service the handful of people that a WISP would. So that's an example again of how we counter it. We make ourselves real. We make ourselves very valuable in that sense, and that goes a long way, much further, frankly, than a campaign contribution will go.
Right. So I'm a member of WISPA. I'm a WISP myself. What is there a call to action, a call what can I do as a WISP member? You mentioned that you facilitate meetings. So say my congressman is in DC and I choose to go out there. Would I contact you and you would put me in front of the person to state my case if I so choose? I mean, is that how that kind of works?
Well, I think the most
would you do the introductions? Or am I totally off base?
No. When we do these policy fly-ins, and we're planning one, I think right now we're tentatively on the books for a late summer, maybe midsummer fly-in next year. Join us. Come. We will facilitate the meetings with your members. And we have some members who are looking, frankly, to go look at the sites when they're back in their states and their districts. They want to go see what's a WISP. When you say you have, poll issues, attachment issues, they want to see what we're talking about. They like to get into the field. Their staff like to get into the field. We just need you to get involved. Get involved with the committee. Become more involved. Come, I will be at WISPapalooza. Come talk with me. Let me know you have an interest. We'll make sure that you're getting the invitations to come to Washington. Get involved, both locally. If you don't want to come to Washington, we can try to facilitate something in the district. We may ask you to do a letter. May ask you to reach out to your local member staff even. It's not always about the actual member. So, no, we will help you get engaged. We just need to know that you're willing to get engaged.
Gotcha. One other question is, before the show, you mentioned some examples of what not to do and what not to, the negative things that we don't want to go down, being a neophyte at doing any of this. What are some of the things, I don't want to go talk to my senator and totally blow it for the industry.
And Stephen, that's an excellent point. The key for us is we work really hard to develop proper talking points to keep us on message. Perception is reality in politics. So we work really hard to make sure that the language we need our members to use is something that is going to be well understood, accepted in Washington, and not going to create new problems for us. That's why working with us is so critical, because with our experience and our knowledge of what causes us, Washington is full of what we call ripple effects. Everybody understands what the ripple effect is. When you throw that pebble into the pond, all of those ripples that come off of it. We spend an immense amount of time trying to reduce potential ripple effects. Ripples are typically negative for ours. So, for us, it's about working with us hand in glove. We'll put the message points together. We'll help facilitate the opportunity. We'll keep you on message and on target, because that allows us to speak as one voice. I mean, we're all WISPA members for, hopefully everybody is a WISPA member, but as WISPA, we try to make sure we're speaking with one voice that we know will represent the broad interests of the association and its members, one voice that we know will have the most positive effect in Washington. And that's the critical point. We have limited opportunities, as we've said, to make our case and to make our case cohesively, and we want to make sure that gets done properly each time. So we will work with you hand in glove to make sure that we're all on that same page and you're ready to go into those meetings.
And I know you guys have been doing this in short order, and it sounds like you're making tremendous progress in the short time you've been working with the organization. You threw out Forbes Mercy's conversation. Did he go in there with talking points, or was he just speaking about, what he knows from what he's read?
Well, no, we worked with, so before our policy summit, we sat down, we went over the talking points with everybody. We walked everybody through where our priorities were that the Legislative Affairs Committee and then the board at WISPA decided was the most important points at that time. Of course, you have extemporaneous conversations. People need to hear from your own voice what your business is like and where you're headed. That's more important or just as important as the talking points we're putting together on the legislative policy side. So it's a mixture of both. Your story as a WISPA member and as a business is extremely valuable, and they need to hear that in your own words. Where we just try to stay focused is on the legislative and the regulatory world and making sure our language is as tight as can be on those.
Gotcha.
So it's a good mix of both.
A lot of things I'm sure that you do is you get the people who need to be there. And then it's our job. There's nothing like putting a real world, someone who is out in the field, out in the sticks, or out in the country, that is actively helping a community, putting that person in front of the right person that you have said, hey, you need to come in and talk to these people. And that's really a lot of what I'm sure that you do is get the right people in here, because as you just said, they don't know, and then all of a sudden they find out that they might be able to get service from one of our members. All of a sudden it puts brings everything into the home, into the family of, hey, these guys can actually do something. We need to try to support them.
Des, it's an excellent point. This town, I'm not a big fan of what's known as meetings for the sake of meetings. For us, it's important, and this is a directive that's come down from the top here at WISPA, from the board on down through the legislative committee, is we have finite resources. We need to make sure we're getting the most out of every resource we have. And as we say, when we're firing a bullet, we're not just shooting in the dark. So when we look to the members of Congress we need to engage, we are looking for the folks who are most important. The folks, and we discussed this earlier, the legislative plans we put together. Who's the most important people? The staffers and the members. Get them with the right people from WISPA who can speak eloquently, and make sure that those messages are as concise as possible. Because, again, we as an association, it's not a high spending association. We are not spending nearly the amounts of money as our competitors, even our small business competitors. We're very focused on making sure we're getting the most out of every asset we utilize. So that's the critical part for us. Then we will broaden, and we do broaden to other members who can be coalition developed. But again, everything we do is with a very specific purpose in mind. So Dennis, as you said, when we're looking to do something, it's because we've already decided the purpose, we've put the strategy in play, and we know what we're trying to accomplish. And that's where taking the best use of the limited WISPA resources we have is critical, including our own members, because we don't want to waste everybody's time for the meeting for the sake of a meeting. We want to make sure that whatever it is we're doing, it's going to have a direct and positive effect.
There we go. There you go. Really, really good information. I'm really glad that you and I thank you for taking the time to come on the show here and mention this. As we know, the show will be we stream it live, but also there's lots of people that come in afterwards and definitely take a look and watch the videos and stuff like that. So it really gives us a good sense of what's going on. So thank you very much.
I got a question for you. So you mentioned the policies of the board of WISPA, and the board is put together of a bunch of highly intelligent people that can kind of rub the Ouija board and say, this is what we need to do. What are some of the policies that, is there a place where we can read up on what WISPA's looking to do? You said earlier in the year that you guys got together and figured out these were the important issues we need to address, and these are the particular people we need to talk to. I mean, is there a way for me, Mr. WISP operator, saying, well, I'm interested, I want to see what the talking points are, and, you said you're going to be at WISPalooza. I'm wondering if there's a chance where we could visit and maybe a room or something to talk about these talking points and, the strategies that have come up out of the committee that you're a part of.
Excellent point, Stephen. I know that we have begun just recently doing updates to the WISPA membership via the share lists of what's happening in Washington. There will be a panel. I believe it's Tuesday late afternoon, I believe, is when we will be doing it, WISPApalooza. I think we're still trying to finalize that on the legislative efforts. I would love for everybody to come because, again, as I see these things, it's an open discussion. We need to be having a discussion of what we're seeing back in, as we say from Washington, in real America, because we don't see Washington as real America. Washington is a very isolated pocket. But we need to hear from everybody what's happening in the real world as you see it, and we will discuss what we're seeing in Washington, and that's where we will have a very dynamic discussion on it. I will be there for multiple days and love to have as many opportunities to meet with anybody who'd love to. I'll be available the entire time. And I don't know that we're putting out our papers on our website or not. To be honest, we're still drafting. We had our policy talking points we distributed at the policy forum. I believe that might be up on our website. I'll have to be honest, I'm not in charge of that. I'll have to check with the folks back at WISPA headquarters. But it's easy to, if you want to have a conversation, I'm sure, through the committee and through us, somebody will be glad to have a conversation and discuss where we're headed, what's the priorities. And as I do, I have several WISPA members whom I've met at the fly-ins who reach out to me on a regular basis to talk about different things. And frankly, who want to invite their members to come out to their facilities, and so we help facilitate that as well. So we're available. Just reach out to us, and we'll get back to you easily. Not a problem.
Now, through your years of doing this activity, you came to us and we hired you. Do you have a technology background at all? And you've already established quite a few relationships through the number of years you've been doing this activity. Was it pretty easy, and was the integration of WISPA into your organization pretty seamless?
Everything has its road bumps. I have a background from the lobbying world of multiple technology companies and different sections of technology industry, as well as helping young associations establish their presence in Washington. I think that's where our value, I believe, when after the interview process, and WISPA interviewed a tremendous number of firms that some were stovepipe, just technology experts, some were more political firms. I think we brought a pretty good balance to the table of technology background with the background to really help small associations begin to establish their presence in Washington. All of this is a learning curve of how you work together. I've been very fortunate that the folks from the WISPA end that I've been working with, again, as they get it. So much of a key part about Washington is understanding Washington. I can tell you that our immediate past president, Chuck Hogg, our new president, Alex, and Elizabeth Bowles, who's been our legislative committee chair, all three of them got it. Everybody I've been working with at WISPA has been very easy to work with because everybody's understood. Even more fun for me was the WISPA members who came to Washington for the policy summit. There were folks who were very much novices about how Washington worked and left there really doing an excellent job and have become much more engaged in helping us on the agenda. So in terms of the integration, that part has been, while you always hit a road bump here or there discussing on how one works together, it's been seamless in the sense of the ability to move the ball forward very quickly. We really have accomplished quite a bit since we began working together in the early spring, and we're going to have much more to go over the next, I'd say 12 months, because a lot is going to take place in our industry in that time frame. So, that part's been great. But I really mean it. The best part has been working with folks from all different backgrounds and levels within the WISPA structure, from the top down, who get it, and the folks who want to get it and want to learn. And that has been that I had so much fun at the policy summit where we had folks literally who had never been to Washington and had never understood it, to folks who were former staffers in Washington. We had such a diverse group, and when everybody left, I think everybody left feeling they'd accomplished a lot, and I believe we did accomplish an immense amount. So
that sounds like it in short order.
It's amazing. Washington is really about patience, because we always say that it's a process in Washington. It's not an event; it's a process. What was interesting was the vacuum that existed for a voice like ours in our industry was so apparent, and we immediately moved in to fill that vacuum. And because of that, and because the board decided that it really wanted to engage, I know this sounds like fluff. I admit it really kind of sounds corny, but the reality was when I went to one of the first stakeholder meetings of the Senate, the House and the Senate hosted a stakeholder meeting of all the industries who were interested in the open internet rules and what the effects were. And you had all of the big guys around the table. And we stepped in and have become the loudest small business voice in that debate because it was such a big vacuum for a voice like ours. WISPA's really moved in and really filled a big gap in the small business sector that was empty before. It just wasn't being filled, and because of that, that's why we've really had success. There was a void, and simply by moving in, we have filled that void, and now we have a regular seat at the table. You can't have that seat at the table if you're not here. I'm sure you've all heard the comment, out of sight, out of mind. I'm going to give you all a funny, maybe not so funny, but an anecdote we always discuss in Washington. I'm sure everybody remembers a little company named Napster. Nobody knew who Napster was before Napster existed, but nobody knew what Washington could do to Napster, and Napster had no presence in Washington. And now they're gone. There was another little company named Microsoft who did not have a single lobbyist retained in Washington until the Clinton administration went after them for antitrust. Washington, when you're not here, you're out of sight, you're out of mind, and it's very easy for things to happen to you. That's why the engagement now is really getting us that seat and getting us the opportunities that we're seeking as an industry to grow our businesses. And at the same time, prevent bad things from happening to us. So
it's those two stories that you just mentioned that make me go, in the infinite wisdom of the board, wonderful, wonderful decision to go forth with this, because who knows what could happen to us if we didn't have representation. You know what I'm saying?
I'm going to give you while it's not a direct WISPA, I have another small association I worked with who literally is in the very exact same positions of WISPA. Totally different industries, totally different sector. There was a bill up for consideration, which is actually passed now, where their competitors, the big guys, were going to force EPA testing all the way down to my small guys. They retained us. We walked in and had an initial set of meetings, and they had no idea this was happening. It was buried in a bill. It was accepted because there was no voice there to not advocate against it until they showed up. And, literally, it would have put probably half of their members out of business. If they didn't step in, they wouldn't have known. WISPA stepped up really quickly. Open FCC and open internet rules are a little different of how things work in town. But we've become, it was so interesting. During the policy fly-in, we had a discussion about the open internet rules and the small business carve-out. And the discussion was from the staff at the committee. We really need you guys here because you're the reason people want to act. It wasn't for the Verizons or the AT&Ts or the Comcasts. It was because of us, and they didn't want us to go rogue. They needed us. The big guys, ironically, needed us as much as anything. So we've now feel that's what makes this part so much fun for me. That's the part I love the most. It's that thrill and that feeling of when you really move that ball down, and when you're not here, it just doesn't happen.
It's like you said, when your competitors are glad that you're a voice, that says something.
Look, let's be realistic. Our competitors are glad we're a voice because they need us now. They're not glad when we're a voice when they're trying to take over our space.
Of course not.
But again, that's why we have to be here all the time and always have our antennae up and always be, keeping the ear to the rail, as they say, because you never know what's coming around the next corner.
So I got one for you. As our before we wrap up the show here, obviously you lobby for WISPA as an organization. Is there something that you could do for, let's say, an individual member? So I'm in Missouri, and I say, hey, I'm interested in trying to get with somebody. I don't know who that person would be, to help my business in the state of Missouri because of whatever regulation or because of whatever thing that maybe Missouri has. Is that something that you would either would you contract with the individual company, or is that part of the WISPA you're willing to help out that WISPA member to get them, you need to talk to this person, you need to go this direction, at least give them some direction type thing.
There's one thing that I've made shall we say, a rule of how I operate, and my colleagues and I run our business. Our clients are our clients. If we can't do something for you, we'll find you the person who can. If there's a challenge you face from government, let me know. If it's not something we can help you with, we'll help you find the right people who can. That's in the states. We do a lot of states with the governor, a lot of work with governors, but we know great folks who work in the different states. That's always something we can help with. Just don't be shy. Reach out to us. We're glad. Look, we'll talk through anything, and if it's something we can help you with, we will. If it's something that affects the association as a whole, we'll bring it back to the association. If the association wants to take it on, then we will act under that guide. If it's not something the association wants to take on, we can discuss with you whether it's something we can do. But most likely, we'll often simply help you find the right people. Because if it's not a Washington issue, we'll probably help you find the local people that are going to be best positioned to help you. We're here as your representatives, glad to help you. When you have a challenge, let us know. We'll talk it through with you. We'll let you know our opinions, and then if you need help, even more importantly, we may tell you not to hire anybody to save your money because it's not worth investing in, or get you the intel of what's actually happening on the ground. So we'll just talk it through with you.
Alrighty. I mean, that's a great answer. I mean, that's kind of what I was just wondering, because I know there are some members that they don't know the direction to go. Hey, they want to do fiber in their state, but now they're a utility. Maybe that they should have access, but there's nobody that's giving them access. That type of stuff. And I'm not saying that that's a lobbyist job, but it is something that, of course, you have to know where to go to be able to even get a start at it. And that's half the problem.
There's never a dumb question. Just dumb answer. So if you got a question to ask, we'll give you the best of our knowledge, and what that may or may not be worth anything. But we're glad to talk it through with you and all of our experience and see what we can come up with on any challenge you face. So
there you go, Steve. You got anything else, or are we going to wrap it up?
Well, I think we can wrap it up unless Ari's got something else to say. We've been speaking with Ari Storch. He's the president of Cascade Strategies, and they are our lobbyists, WISPA's lobbyists in Washington, D.C., a very enlightening show telling us exactly what lobbyists do and how members of WISPA can help further the cause and keeping on the same message. I appreciate Ari for coming on. Tremendous show. I've learned a pile. How about you, Dennis?
Yeah, lots of great information. And like I said, there was definitely some members that were going, what do they do and how does it work? And that's it. It's just, if you don't know, you have to ask those questions, and I think we answered most of those. Yeah,
exactly. Ari, you got anything else for us?
No, that's about it from my end. Congress will be back next week. The show will begin. The circus will start over, and we'll see if we can get these guys back out of town as soon as possible so they can't break anything anymore.
Right. Well, one thing I want to mention is, like Ari said, there's going to be a breakout session for this particular topic at WISPALOOZA. I highly suggest everyone go to it. If this interests you, I think it should. I'm going to show up there to listen in and see what I personally can do from Podunk, New Mexico, to make things better, not only for myself, but for my industry and for my fellow WISPs around the state as well. Well, with that, Dennis, if you want to wrap us up, we will talk to you guys all next week.
Thank you for listening to ISP Radio. We hope you've gained new insights and additional wisdom in our industry as well as your business. Please remember to visit our show sponsors via the links on ispradio.com. If you're interested in becoming a show sponsor, contact us at sales@ispradio.com. Now go out there and push those packets as fast as you can. Good luck and Godspeed.